great that we're able to pick the brains of some experts and some experienced people who can give you an idea and insight into what's happening in the world around us, and perhaps share a tool or two to help you guys get through some of the challenges you're facing right now. We're very fortunate to have a close friend of mine here with us today. We go way back. We actually have a similar background in education, but that's not where we actually met. We actually met through our second career, our second life in the coaching and consulting space. And Liz Murray, who I'm very pleased to say is an expert in the area of leadership and ensuring that you lead the right way, both ethically, morally, but also productivity wise. And guys, we're very fortunate to have her here for this friendly conversation in perhaps sharing a tool or two to help us and help you guys through this period right now. Liz, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Wayne, for that beautiful, warm introduction. And yeah, we do go way back. And it's funny that we have had the same career path almost. And we certainly have a lot in common in terms of our values and what's important to us, and also in the way we run our businesses. So yeah, it's great to be here.
Most definitely. And I raise that because people say teaching is a small circle, but we actually had finished teaching when we actually caught up, and then we did bond over it. But it's also our views. As you said, we have similar values and similar beliefs and standards that kind of drew us together, and we continue speaking regularly to this day as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We have very regular catch-ups.
Yeah. I mentioned leadership. You work specifically in the leadership laneway. Can you just elaborate a bit more so that we all can understand a bit more about what that entails and what that means?
Yeah, absolutely. So my background is, as you said, in education, and I was a school principal for over 20 years. And
Wow.
The school where I worked, it is a multi-site school. So as much as people are working remotely at the moment with COVID, in my previous role, I was managing up to 7 sites at a time with staff dispersed across those. And
Wow.
So they very rarely came all together as a team. So there were lots of sort of teams spread out all over the place. And I really loved working with such a passionate group of leaders who I was then supporting to go out and lead those teams. So that was kind of where my role was. And I've always really loved leadership. I've always done leadership roles in whatever I'm doing. And it's my passion to constantly learn about leadership, because the thing I love about leadership is when we do it really well, our role is actually to inspire other people to find the best version of themselves, and to see people flourish out there, doing their thing and thriving and just loving it. You know, they bring their mojo every day. Is the best gift in being a leader. So I love now that in my business, I basically have skimmed the cream off my old job, I often say. So now what I do is the best part, which is just helping people in leadership to thrive and to support their teams and to identify who they need to be that version of themselves that will inspire their team members. So that's kind of how I feel my days now, and it just feels like a holiday every day. I love it.
That's amazing, Liz. That really to be able to live and now do what you love and are passionate about, it's so fulfilling, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And what you said there reminds me, and I'm a big sports fan, and I love basketball, soccer and basketball. And that, what you said there reminds me of a Kobe Bryant. Was it, what do you call it? Comment, phrase, quote, that, essentially our roles is to help lift others up to be the best in whatever they want to be. I'm paraphrasing, but along those lines, and it's exactly what leaders do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That feeling you have when you see someone that you've been able to help find their true calling and see that they're actually really capable in that field, and to completely thrive in that. It's the best feeling when you're just watching and observing them have that success. It's just beautiful. It's the best gift. Yeah.
Amazing. And you know, part of the reason why we're speaking is because of what's happening in the world right now, you know, with COVID and the impact not only on a micro level but on a macro level as well. Touch wood in Australia here, where we're still able to manage it and control it, but there have been some regulations put in place that have definitely affected the workplace, like, you know, working from home, working remotely. It's kind of forced us to behave or manage or work differently than what we've used to in the past. And so, being the leadership expert that you are, what have you observed about, I guess, one, on a leadership level, but two, on a, I guess, would I say employee level, leaders and their teams, managing this whole situation without actually being in a face-to-face contact mode?
Yeah, I think one of the greatest challenges my clients are saying is just that having to adapt so quickly. So they've had the challenge come up, but they've had to adapt so quickly, and then people in the leadership roles are really have struggled in how to best support their team members who are off all over the place. And by and large, most of the team members have really settled in well initially and been super productive, even though a lot of them have got kids running around at home, their routine's upset, they don't have a set suitable spot at home to operate from, so they're kind of making do with things. But their productivity's been really good. However, what's happened is a lot of the members have disconnected with their why over time because they're not collaborating with each other in the same way that they used to. They're really missing each other and the vibe that the offices create for people. And so what I'm seeing now is a lot of my leaders are getting a bit burnt out because they're giving so much of themselves to the team members individually, trying to keep those connections going. And so they're not actually getting time to do what they need to do. So they're working incredibly long hours because during the day they're trying to prop up the team members, and then at night they're catching up on their own workload. So the leaders are finding that, and those team members are finding now that initially they liked the novelty of the idea, but now that it's been going on for a while, the reality has sunk in, and they're just getting through the work. And a lot of them, their clients that they're supporting are really stressed. So then they're socially isolated because they're trying to support these people who are stressed, and themselves are a bit isolated. So they're trying to work out ways that they can connect and be able to debrief with one another and keep their common goal in mind. So, there's been some pretty significant challenges for people all around.
Oh, most definitely. It's really interesting to see what's been happening and the initial reaction of it, and then the I guess afterwards, the afterthought, because, you know, everyone's like, can't wait to work from home, you know, get to go to work in my PJs, you know, don't have to worry about getting dressed or anything like that. And as you said, the initial excitement or the initial buzz, the initial energy was there to help them through that initial period. But after reality sunk in that, hey, I've actually got to do this for a little while. I've got to find a way to work and manage my kids, or, you know, I'm going to be on my own for the next little period with no face-to-face interaction. I don't know if I'm really ready for that. It's you know, a lot of people think the grass is greener on the other side, but when they've actually got to the other side, it's not all that great, or it's not as fun or what they make it out to be.
Yeah, absolutely. After a while, the holiday's over.
Yeah, most definitely. From what you were sharing there, is it a case of the leaders are not being able to manage their team, or do they not have the right skill set, or is it a case of they're overcompensating, trying to make sure their staff or their teammates are still being as productive as possible. What would your insights say about that?
Definitely overcompensating.
Mm.
Particularly leaders that are very high energy, that like to be connecting with everyone, and it's a two-way street. Then they're loving that feedback that they're getting as well, so they're not getting that back from their teams. But yeah, definitely.
Can you explain to those people out there what's an I energy? Sorry for interrupting you. But yeah.
Sorry for jumping in there with some. So in the DISC behavioural model, we identify people with different personality types. So dominant being D, I energy are people so dominant people often are in leadership roles and are very driven by goals and big picture thinking, so very clear about their vision and where they want to go. People with high I energy are people, and they really like to make sure everyone's needs are taken care of and that everyone's happy in doing what they're doing. And then we have people with high S energy, and people with high S energy are really caring that everyone's happy and safe. So they like safety and security. And in a situation like COVID, it can be quite difficult for people with high S energy because things are different. And so it's the safety and security that they're used to is not there for a lot of them. And then the final one is the C energy, and people with high C energy love routine and structure. And a lot of that routine and structure has changed now too. So our personality type really impacts quite significantly how things might impact us. Yeah.
And going back, you were talking about how I energies are totally missing the face-to-face contact. Because I just wanted to make sure everyone understood the different. We know it, I know it, but I just want to make sure everyone understood that as well. But yeah, back to I energies needing to, interact and be face-to-face and social.
Yeah, and people with high I energy are very touchy-feely, kinesthetic kind of people. So they tend to be people that like to embrace other people and just have the nice environment around them and really connect with other people in that way. So a lot of them are finding it really difficult. And then as a leader, they're worrying about how well their team members are actually going, because they're not actually there present with them to get a sense of how their team members are going as well. And what can happen if we get a bit overwhelmed by a situation like this, we kind of lose our awareness of self. And in doing that, we kind of don't realise how much we're letting things impact on us. And so losing that self-awareness can be a really significant thing. And the thing I'm noticing with my clients, when they start to really focus on noticing and becoming more self-aware, what they're noticing is what they're making things mean, how they're letting things affect them, how they're letting their priorities of their day shift. And because as a leader, sometimes when we get to the end of the day and we haven't started the tasks that were most important to us, we feel really exhausted. But we've given everything to everyone else because we can be people pleasers. And what actually happens in over weeks of doing that, what's happening to some of these leaders is they're getting worn out because they're giving so much and they're not refilling their own cups. So raising their awareness of self is the key to start with, to work out what's going on and why they're prioritising some things over others. So when we have that higher self-awareness, we're able to do something more about our pattern that's led us to overwhelm.
Oh, most definitely, self-awareness is the key, and it's not the answer, but it allows you to see the answers on so many, or the possibilities in so many different ways. I totally connect. As you know, our education background, my last role was as an assistant principal, which meant I had to lead a team of teachers and students, and I most definitely am an I energy. I love being social. I love being in the presence of people, always high-fiving people, all that kind of stuff. And I thrived in that environment. It's why I became an assistant principal after only 2 years of teaching. But then when I transitioned into my own business, being on my own, you can't help but it's only natural to feel that sense of lostness, because where you normally draw energy from and ideas from, you kind of have to redirect that somewhere else or try to find it from somewhere else. And it was only through learning more about different behaviors and personalities that I was able to become self-aware and then work out a plan to what that not only works best for me, but enabled me to lead myself and my clients in the best possible way, regardless of the environment that I am working in.
Yes. Yeah. It can be quite challenging. And I think the other thing with self-awareness is it's where we reflect and see, are we looking for the opportunity in the obstacle? Because generally people in leadership roles are positive and proactive people. But when there's been something extreme like we've had, sometimes we can see the opportunity for so long that the novelty wears off. And so we've got to do a bit of a self-check and see what's happening there and notice in ourselves, are we reacting to what's happening or are we responding? Can people see our emotions? Are we starting to wear them on our sleeve, or are we still staying quite steady and controlling our responses so that we are responding rather than reacting to what's happening around us? Because all of those things will impact how well our team is surviving.
Yeah. Definitely. And with your I guess expertise in this area, what is the best way to engage with your team? I mean, there's no one best way, but what would you say works in a remote kind of environment with your leadership expertise, and also managing all those different sites stemming back from your education days? Yeah.
And so it's interesting because the answer to that is the opposite to what a lot of people would expect, because it's like they say on an aircraft, you've got to put your own mask on first.
Yes.
It's the same in leading remote teams. You actually need to make sure that your needs are being met first, and you're the person that's got the big picture in mind all the time. So you've got that helicopter view, whereas your team members are more like working on the ground toward that bigger picture, doing their part of that. So for you to be able to keep that big picture in your mind and be able to drill down to what's impacting your team members, you need to be really taking care of yourself and making sure that you're prioritising time for those really important tasks that do create the opportunity for everyone to achieve that bigger picture. And too often as leaders, when we get overwhelmed, we forget about that and we get stuck in all the little separate areas, and that's when we lose sight of our vision. So the first thing is we need to prioritise our time and look at our week and literally a bit of self-management, plan how we're going to chunk out our week to make sure that we are connecting with everyone, that everyone's checking in with us and connecting with each other and accountable to each other, and that we're making time for us and what we need to do as the leader to keep the boat rowing in the right direction. Because it's almost like they've all got separate oars, and if we're not constantly looking at where we're rowing to, then we're going to be pulling the boat in all kinds of directions and not getting anywhere. So it's really important that we keep that in mind and organise our time with the stuff that we need to do as our first priority across the week, and then allocating time for the teams. So, and the next thing I'd say is for the teams, like we know in education that collaboration is so important for anyone, any human. Being able to collaborate with other humans is actually what brings out the best in us. And having accountability to one another really helps drive as well. It drives our ability to think outside the square and think of how we can all work together. And I love that idea of we become most like the 5 people we hang around the most.
So true.
Yeah, so as a leader, you want to create teams where those team members all feel like that about each other. So whether they're remote or actually face-to-face, you still want them to have some collaboration and be creative with each other and have some accountability to each other. And when you do that and those people are really clear about which way they're always got to go and what speed, then every team is doing that, moving in that direction without you needing to be constantly present in all of those teams. So having that structure around accountability, creativity between them, and collaboration around the common goal for their group is key. And so your role then becomes checking in and reinforcing how well they're doing it, moving toward the direction that they need to go.
It's so true. The accountability thing plays a big role in achieving milestones and goals and productivity, because and I'm just using I guess a real life example. You know, whenever you need to, we all try to be healthy. We all aspire to be healthy and fit, but if it's just us on our own day trying to go work out somewhere and you're not feeling it, you make up an excuse because it's just you. But if you know you're going to meet someone there, or you've promised someone that you're going to be there for that workout session, regardless of how crappy your day is or how stressed you're feeling, you make the extra effort to go there because of that accountability factor. And that plays also a big role, not just in your personal life, but in your professional world, 100%.
Yeah.
Cool.
And
that's really cool.
That challenge around that we make sure that if a member of the team's not steering in the right direction, that we are straight in there to offer support and get clear to the person about what it is that we need them to achieve and what we'll see them doing when they are working toward that common goal. And then letting them know, we'll check in with you in a week or two to see how that's going and see what other support we can put in. And something that's been interesting I've noticed through COVID is a lot of the leaders have been resistant to following up on performance issues because people have got so much going on. And I think human nature, when we're the one underperforming, we feel bad about ourselves. If no one says something to us about our behaviour, we just start feeling worse and worse. And so what ends up happening is you end up going closer and closer into a dark hole because no one's you know that other people know it's not right. You know people know you haven't been doing things, and no one's saying anything, and then you lose the trust.
Yes.
So the most important thing we can do as leaders is reach out to those people who are underperforming to ask questions and understand what's happening for them, because there's a lot of people going through a lot of really big challenges right now. And a lot of these leaders have team members who are still being paid. So, there's a lot of people out there without work and without income in their homes. The leaders I'm working with, their team members are still being paid and there's no change in income, but there's all kinds of things happening around them that are impacting them. So reaching out to get a bit of an understanding of what's happening for those people and creating a plan together helps keep that afloat, rather than just letting it go by the wayside where they just start to go down and down and feel really disconnected them from the team.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think you've hit the nail on the head in regards to trust. No one likes to be micromanaged, because if you are micromanaged, there's that, well, what doesn't trust me? Why don't they trust me to do my thing? But also on the flip side, you have to be able to, trust goes both ways. Yeah. So in order to have that freedom, you have to, they have to have that trust in you that you're able to perform the duties that you have been paid to do. And feedback, as you were talking about there, feedback is definitely key to that component there, because there's a general consensus, or not a general consensus, but generally when there's feedback, you're having a feedback conversation, the thinking is, oh man, what are they going to rouse me? What are they going to pick on me for? What did I do wrong? What do I have to do more? And I think that comes from the intent of the conversation that they come in with. And not many leaders, I could be wrong, but not many leaders go into the conversation, a feedback conversation, with the intent of the aim of supporting them and what can you do to help them through this period so that they're not floundering. Yeah, you are spot on, and I agree with you that I don't see a lot of evidence of that. Often when someone's approaching a performance conversation, it's because they're frustrated with themselves that they have let it go so far, anything, and they actually make it about themselves. Rather than, the reason we give feedback is to help the other person improve.
And for what purpose would you hold that back? For what purpose would we choose not to help someone improve on what they're doing? You know, the most successful people in the world, the difference between them and the rest of the world is that they've actually made and learnt from more mistakes than the rest of the population. So when someone makes a mistake in underperforming, why would we not help them learn from that mistake so that they can continuously improve? Yeah,
most definitely. It's I definitely resonate with that because as you know, business can, when you go on, I'll start again. When you go into business, it can be a lonely time, and the only feedback you're receiving is your own personal feedback. And sometimes, generally speaking, you're really harsh on yourself because that's the way we're designed to be. But if you can have some tools or tools or tips, or have a strategy to ensure that you continue to be productive, that will help alleviate that pressure you're putting on yourself rather than just keeping it mentally. Because as you know, and as I'm sure others have experienced, our minds are 24/7. You know, there's no real, sometimes I can switch off, but generally speaking, it goes on 24/7, motoring, thinking. And I think it's just really good to have it written down, just something so simple, written down what to do, what you need to do, just to help you stay focused on what you need to be doing. Is that something, I guess, you would encourage, or is that something, a strategy, something along those lines, some strategies you can share to help ensure that people are being productive, to maintain that trust moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where that self-awareness comes in because, I mean, you and I are both high energy people, and often we're very good at being busy. And in leadership, it's really easy to be busy being busy because you're out rescuing everyone and helping everyone else all the time. And the key around that is when you're noticing yourself getting really busy with your thinking, usually that's a sign that it's time to stop thinking for a minute and start feeling. And because when we're overthinking things, like when you wake up and the problem's still in your head, or you go to bed and you can't, you know, switch your mind off because it's still racing, or you get to, your partner comes home and you start telling them and debriefing about the thing, all of that's a sign that it's time to stop thinking about it and start noticing what you're feeling about it. Because all overthinking, and you alluded to this earlier, it's actually our ego trying to put it understand it in a way that makes us feel better about ourselves. That's what human nature is all about. So when we're noticing ourselves overthinking, it's time to stop and understand what is it we're actually feeling about this situation. How am I physically feeling, and what is this emotion that I'm experiencing? Because when we're overthinking, the only way to stop that is to actually feel into the emotion that's connected with it and let that emotion be. And we're very good at suppressing those emotions, and when we do, we just think more and do our heads in.
Especially for males, we've been told, it's socially normal to suppress our emotions, you know, because if we emote in any way, we're kind of going against social standards. And it's speaking from a male perspective, that's one of the biggest challenges that I've had, especially coming from a Vietnamese background where males dominate and we're always right, and we don't really have to acknowledge anyone else's feelings or emotions, because how we feel is how we feel. We can do whatever we want. And I guess for me, like, so growing here up in Australia, I've slowly learnt to, I guess not deal, but understand my emotions and put it towards, turn it into a productive measure. And the turning point for me in my levels of leadership and productivity was, one, setting my intention for that day. You know, I used to set a leadership intention. You know, what am I going to do as a leader for today? What am I going to do for myself as a person today? And what am I going to do for my clients today? And then from there, I derived out what emotional state do I need to be in to fulfill those. because as you know, we control our emotional states. And so we just have to choose the one that will help us be the best version for today or that day to ensure that we get what we need done.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And that emotional regulation is what gets us there. It's exactly as you said. Who we need to be is all about our awareness of where we're at and being able to manage ourselves effectively to be able to be that version of ourselves. And because we know that the days where we live that, at the end of the day, we feel energized and we feel so good about ourselves because of who we're being.
Yes.
The days when we feel overwhelmed are the days when we haven't been checking in about our priorities of who we need to be, and we realise at the end of the day we weren't that person, and that's where our ego comes back in and jumps on us. And when we reach for leadership roles, we're people who automatically are high achievers who put a lot of pressure on ourselves. And so when we've had those days when we're not the best version of ourselves, that's when we get that we're thinking and beating ourselves up about all the things we haven't done. So instead of acknowledging ourselves for the 127 things we did do, we focus on the 2 things that we didn't get to that day. Yeah.
Oh, so true. So true. It comes back down to perspective, doesn't it? We talked about leaders, and you shared some key things that they could do to ensure that they are fulfilling their roles, and to ensure that they're not being burnt out as well. But on the other side of that, you know, the people working with these leaders, do you have any, insights or any considerations that they should take into to ensure that they can continue to be productive in their remote environments, and perhaps some skills or tips that they can do now that they can carry back on into the offices when we're all allowed to go back there?
Yeah, I think one of the great opportunities for us at the moment, while people are working remotely and they're not in their normal workplace, by now, because the honeymoon's over, people can see what they're missing and what they're really enjoying. And this is where self-awareness comes in, because if you really use this as an opportunity to learn more about yourself and what makes you tick and what you're loving and what you're not loving, it helps you work out what the best harmony is for you in your work day to day. And noticing how you're getting through the days now compared to what you used to do when you were back at the office or workplace, whatever that looked like. And noticing what your drivers are. Like, are you someone that's needing a lot of variety? And so you're finding at home, now that you've been there for a while, you actually notice you need to get up and walk outside every now and then, or break your day up into chunks so that you've got that variety. Are you someone that's really driven by connection and initially didn't mind being with the family because you love family, but perhaps you're starting to miss connection with the colleagues and sharing and brainstorming together? And so you might notice that you're calling people more often or feeling a bit lonely, and perhaps that's an opportunity for you to call people more often. And just noticing what makes you tick and what kinds of things you're driven to, because the more self-awareness we have, the more we realise we actually have a lot of choice. Even within the workplace and the structure of the workplace, we've got a choice about the way we approach things and chunking things into bits so that we're getting to complete the things in a way that makes us feel good about ourselves as well. So that checking in with yourself and noticing what your drivers are and what days you feel better than others and what did those days look like, because that's something you can take with you in everything that you do.
Oh, most definitely. It's as we keep alluding to, it comes down to that self-awareness of being able to understand not only what you're feeling but also what you're thinking, and try to not just dismiss it, like, because you're human, you're allowed to feel those things and you're allowed to think those things, but knowing that, okay, I've had that thought, I've had that feeling, how can I be now to push on with the rest of the day? It's definitely key. And it could be something as simple as generating a list. I'm just trying to make it tactical now, because when we have a list, and people can use lists the wrong way. Let's not get confused. Let's not get confused about that. You can keep adding to your list, and as you know, lists keep growing. But for that day, have a list of your top 5 is what you need to do that day, so that you can feel a sense of accomplishment when you tick it off. You know.
Yeah.
And to go with that, estimate how long you're going to need for each of those tasks, so you can plan accordingly. And you said it before, we work best at different times. So perhaps this is getting a bit deeper and a bit more well, I said deeper, but more insightful, is probably allocate the work for yourself at your best time for you. So you're a morning person, and that you're most chirpy in the morning. That's probably the best time to have some conversations with people. And that kind of thing. But it all comes back to knowing what your outcome for the day is, and it's really important there, because and from my experience, a lot of people just get through the day without having any foresight of what they want to achieve for that day. But if you know what you're going to achieve for that day, it kind of gives you that little drive to keep pushing, to make sure that you fulfill what you set out to achieve.
Yeah. And I think sometimes the opposite is true too, where we're not specific enough in our list. So we put, instead of putting specific details of exactly the steps we're going to achieve that day, we put just the label for the big picture project. And then it's actually might be, 12 hours worth of work, and we could have chunked it down to say, I'm going to work on the first 3-hour part of that today. But because we put that big picture, we've kind of gone too high with the, we haven't been detailed enough and specific enough, and then we feel overwhelmed that we didn't achieve all of it. So chunking things down into steps a bit more and saying, which of the steps am I going to work on today, makes a big difference. Because as you said, if you can tick those things off at the end of the day, you do feel so much better about yourself, and you've got something to acknowledge yourself for, which is really important. Yeah.
So true. Do you mind if I just share something? I've got I used to use a little template like this to help me get through my day, because and I'm just going to show. It's just easier to show, but hopefully it's working. No, is that coming up there, Liz? No,
it's just got your initials.
Okay.
There it is. Yeah, you got it.
So, hang on a sec. I don't know what's happened there.
Yeah,
is it like a? So I used to have something like a daily planner. Yeah. So for me, my morning routine would help set me up for the day. So something as simple as having a smile, to start off with. Get that initial emotion going through you, and I would just choose 2 or 3. I'll be honest, I only tick the cold shower in the warmer seasons, but that helped me set out my 5 key things for the day. And then my daily task also included, making sure my inbox was responded to, and I would have to listen to a podcast that day. And then I would also throw in like a run or a paddleboard, whatever it is. But then down the bottom there, we always get ideas, and sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night because I had an idea earlier in the day, but I didn't write it down, and it just came back to me in the middle of the night. So I would, those 4 boxes down the bottom there would let me write down ideas of what I could do the following day. And then I would also have a wind down routine, because when I first started in business, I would be working till midnight every night, but that's not sustainable at all. So, I'm happy to share this with everyone else out there. If you just leave a comment below, but it doesn't have to be this. It can be something much simpler that works for you, just to outline your day so you know what you're doing.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great planner. It makes a difference, doesn't it, when you have that bit of structure?
Most definitely. And then you go up from there, knowing what you want to achieve for the week, reverse engineering from, your 12-month goals all the way down to what you want to achieve weekly. But you got to start off with just making the most of your days. And that was for me the biggest thing. Once I started doing that, started mapping out not just what I wanted to do, but how I wanted to feel and be throughout the day. That's when I noticed my business started to grow and started to gain traction, because I had much more clarity in my daily actions.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes a world of difference. Yeah, having that structure.
Yeah. So picking your brain now, with everything that's going on, we don't know how long COVID's going to be around for. We don't know how long the regulations and restrictions are going to be in place for. When COVID does eventually wrap up, or once we get a good grasp or a good handle of it, how do you see, I guess, the working place, the working environment once, if the whole situation's over? Do you think, and this is purely, we're just speculating, do you think we'll continue to work remotely, or do you think everyone will just have that urge just to go back and start smashing it out from the office space again?
I'm really hopeful that leaders are able to embrace more options, really. If people are making the most of this opportunity now to help their teams connect from all these different locations and that kind of thing, I'm hoping that we'll be able to be flexible enough that we'll be able to accommodate how people actually are best when people are in their zone of optimum productivity. Mm-hmm. We can consider being able to be flexible in our thinking around what a workplace looks like. That would be an awesome outcome from all of this, I think. Definitely there needs to be opportunities for the teams to connect in some way. However, I think that there's definitely massive opportunities for us to take moving forward. And probably to be able to be more inclusive in our workplaces too, where people have got all these different things in their lives in general anyway. And certainly, like for me in my old role, having to travel constantly between sites and those kinds of things, it just makes so much sense to not be spending all that time in the car and still be able to connect in this way. So I'm hopeful that people will be able to think pragmatically around the physical location and whether people actually need to be on site. Probably even more than that, one thing that's been really crucial for businesses to survive in COVID is to have increased their communication with the team members and get that collaboration happening. So I'm hoping that another big takeaway for people will be really thinking about the way that they're communicating and giving people opportunities. So communicating the right information so that the team members can thrive and show what they're capable of and problem solve, and feel that trust building up. I think it's a brilliant opportunity for us to build trust with team members. Yeah.
Liz, that is amazing. Thank you for sharing all of that. You and I, we go way back. I like to consider us good friends now, and we could chat for ages about this. Is because we're both so passionate and we both love it so much, and we just want to continue to support everyone else out there. But for those who want to just touch base with you regarding anything you've said today, or perhaps even ask you a question about leadership, what's the best means for them to reach out to you? Just let us know.
So look, email me. My email is liz@edgeofpossibilities.com.au, or check out my website or Facebook page. It's all Edge of Possibilities, which is my business name, because I like to help people stretch to the edge of possibilities of what they're capable of. Reach out to me through any of those forums, and anyone that does connect with me, I've got a lovely little PDF document I've put together on how to support yourself and manage yourself through the overwhelm of everything that's going on right now. So don't hesitate to reach out via email, phone, through my social media. I'd love to hear from you, and I'm here to help. So I'd love to hear.
That's awesome. Awesome. We'll make sure that you will get your details on this post when we release this video. But also, guys, if you want to any of those documents from either myself or Liz, just leave a comment below and we'll make sure we'll reach out to you with that. But Liz, thank you for your time. As always, it's a pleasure. And I'm sure people will have gained so much just from you sharing your insights about leadership and working remotely, and making sure that we're all on the same wavelength moving forward.
Thanks, Quang, and yours too. Thank you for sharing.
That's amazing. Speak to you soon, Liz.
Okay, bye. See ya.